What will happen now when you're asking them to come up with a phone, an iPad, a laptop, a desktop? Do they have them? Where will they find them? Government services are closed. You can't just go to the library. And if you have multiple children in a home, who's going to be privileged to learn?
Hi there, and welcome to the Pondering Dan podcast, where we talk all things teaching, education, pedagogy, and technology. I'm your host, Danny Summerall, and if you're new to the show, make sure you leave a review and share with your peers. Connect with me on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Pondering Dan, as well as at ponderingdan.com. This week's guest on the podcast is Natasha Feghali. Natasha comes to us this week from Windsor, Ontario in Canada, and will share her experiences as an educator during these uncertain times. She's a teacher in the Greater Essex County School Board, an ESL and literacy instructional coach, as well as an award-winning Canadian for her philanthropy in community and strong dedication to education. She's the recipient of the 40 Under 40 United Way Leadership Windsor ESSEC Award for 2018, as well as numerous other awards and recognitions. She's an international educator working overseas throughout her career while giving workshops, seminars, and conferences nationally and internationally. She's taught in China, France, Kuwait, and Ontario for 10 years. You can connect with Natasha on Twitter at NEFeghali. That's NEFeghali. So thank you so much for being a guest on this week's episode, Natasha. I feel really honoured to be speaking with you.
It's my absolute pleasure. I am so grateful, and I really look forward to this conversation.
Yes, me too. So as someone that's worked in many, many countries, I can only imagine that you're hearing many different stories of how the COVID-19 crisis is affecting them, and at the same time, be very much able to relate to them.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And Dan, actually, this week that has just passed, so the week past, I was traveling back to Kuwait for the week, and I was to host a 2-day workshop at the American Bilingual School. And so everything has really just been canceled. It's unbelievable. It's totally unbelievable. And all over from what I've seen and what I've been reading every day, ravagely reading, everyone is feeling the exact same immense amount of pressure in education as how are we going to best service the needs of our students at this time.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of anxiety, but I think a lot of the teachers that I've spoken to, especially in my school, actually have a bit of a positive mindset about how to deal with how students are going to learn from home, which has really impressed me. Of course, there's the anxiety about the unknown with the virus itself, but as far as doing something different and getting out of their comfort zone, I'm really impressed with the teachers at my school with how well they're sort of embracing everything. But can you explain a little bit about what the situation is in Windsor in Canada right now for you in regards to school closures?
So this past week we had a holiday. It was our March break holiday. From the March break holiday, now on Monday will be the official first day of school closure. So that's March 23rd. We are preparing for this. First off, our union, our Elementary Teachers Federation, is preparing because we were in a round of negotiations, which now they've come to a collective agreement. They've settled on an agreement. So that will be the predicate to how we behave, how we teach, and what is our expectation going forward. And for different levels of education, there are some educational supports online already. However, is this something that is, say, thoroughly developed and we're doing MOOCs and we have a Blackboard learning? No, not to my knowledge. It is possible in other provinces. However, working with teachers and collaborating with teachers via social media sites like Twitter and reading their feeds, I don't know that everyone is prepared for what's to come.
So did you get any warning? Like, was it you went home on a Friday night and then over the weekend you were told, well, hang on, you're not coming to school on Monday anymore?
Well, on the Friday, we learned that schools will be closed indefinitely. No, I'm sorry, not indefinitely, until April 5th. And that, come Monday the 23rd, and rightfully so, that we're asked to be ready for work, and whatever work will be directed to us from our school board,
Mm,
and that we're asked and ready to work come Monday the
yeah.
23rd.
See, here in Australia, we've been expecting to be closed, and there's a bit of uproar at the moment that we're not closed. Um, but we've been told by our Victorian Premier just today, actually, he made an announcement to say that this coming Friday will be a student-free day for all Victorian students because
Okay.
it's our last day of school term anyway.
All
And then
right.
we break for 2 weeks, and then the first day of term two will be a student-free day as well. And they're designed to apparently help teachers prepare to be able to teach remotely. And like I was talking to you before we began the podcast, a lot of us are pretty well prepared now already. We're just waiting to be told to be closed. So we're it feels like this weird limbo land for us.
Right.
Just waiting to be told that we're not opening tomorrow. But it's interesting to compare. You've been shut for a week. We're not shut yet. We might not be for a week. So we'll see what happens. But um, in talking to you as well, it's interesting to know that your role is very similar to mine in that you do a lot of work to support
Yes.
teachers. So
Yes.
I
Yes.
guess with your school and with your role, so what have you been doing to support your educators there?
Well, I've been waiting for directive from my coordinator. So because I work in ESL and literacy, most of what we've done has been in person. And
Mm,
we've always collaborated with the teachers during their preparation periods to prepare resources for different lessons that they're going to be conducting: social studies, math, as well as I work with small groups of primary age students, and I do a literacy program with them, which is called LLI, Leveled Literacy
yeah,
Intervention.
yeah, we
Yeah,
have
okay.
that same
So you know
program.
it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so it's awesome.
yeah,
This is going to be very interesting in the way that, or how are we going to still be able to support those students in literacy? Are we going to conduct our own group sessions where the students log in with us, and then we do a literacy? Because I would think, in my opinion, that that would be really an effective way if the students are already hooked up online, and as well as it could happen, say, during the teachers' preparation period. We can organize that, send it to the teachers, and they can send it out to the students. So, in fact, because we just were notified Friday, we've been given directive that we will be working on Monday, and to expect to work and to be prepared for it. Have we received the bulk of what we're going to be doing? Not yet. I say that, not yet. Um, and then once we know, I believe that will be when the expectation begins on what to prepare and how to deliver it.
yeah.
So and as I said, we were just in the middle of bargaining for our collective agreement for our jobs. So that's now been rectified, and an agreement, a tentative agreement, has been struck, which, of course, with unions, there are obviously different levels that will need to take place now in order to agree on what's been adopted. However, all of this will affect, I believe, how we're going to proceed going forward.
Mm, yeah, that's an
It'll be
interesting thing.
interesting.
Yeah,
In a few
yeah,
weeks, we'll really see how the nooks and crannies will have taken shape.
yeah, yeah. So obviously, the way you teach at home is something that's on your mind. Um, as far as the people that you've been speaking to, either at your school or in your own professional learning networks,
Yes,
what would
yes.
you say has been the biggest worry on their minds in relation to teaching remotely?
The biggest worry, Dan, is that tech divide.
Yeah,
Students who do not have access or the ability to access technology from home, as well as who will be responsible in supporting them in learning from home? As we spoke, because of certain school neighborhoods, certain school areas, the socioeconomics of those neighborhoods, of those communities, are very low, and we are already supporting the students at school for basic necessities. What will happen now when you're asking them to come up with a phone, an iPad, a laptop, a desktop? Do they have them? Where will they find them? Government services are closed. You can't just go to the library. And if you have multiple children in a home, who's going to be privileged to learn? If all learning, say, is taking place between 8 and 3, who's going to be the student chosen to learn? And which one will be neglected? And what about our students who are in special education classes? That one-on-one is so critical, as well as what happens with our kindies. So junior kindergarten and kindergarten. This is now, these are some of their formative years where they are learning, they're exploring, they're developing. What's going to happen with them? They may sit at home and just play.
Yeah. And also, what about those kids where the only safety they have is at school? Children
That's,
that are, that
that's the
opens a whole other can of
overarching.
worms. Yeah.
Yes. You know what, Dan? It's a whole spider web of really
Of what ifs.
fear, of what ifs.
Mm.
If this happens, if then statements. And it's a whole spider web of fear and a whole spider web of unknowns. And they all tie in together. And I think that more than anything, educators have always done and wanted to do the best for their students. And they will, even during this time, they will do the best for their students. It's just how we will proceed forward will be very interesting, and who will be accountable if the students are not doing what they need to do at home. How are we going to get those summative and formative assessments? How are we going to assess the students? What if they cannot provide us, if they don't have a scanner or a printer, as we said earlier, a printer?
And we're teachers and we don't have one,
and we're teachers and we don't have a printer. Are we going to, perhaps, is the government maybe preparing a package that will be delivered to every home, and the students will follow along? We'll follow along with them. We'll guide them through their learning with a package. For some of our, say, secondary students who are not able to work from a classroom, they're not able to learn from a classroom. Sometimes they have modules that they take home in order to achieve their high school credits. Are we going to follow that model? And if so, what will that look like? How are we going to support the students? We can't just go to their homes. We can't call them on the phone. I mean, and a lot of it is the parameters around also our collective agreement with our union. So what if a student needs help, say, in the evening? Will the working hours be different? There's a lot of unknowns, I believe, going forward. There's really a lot of unknowns. And of course, we'll get directive from our school boards and our superiors. They'll give us directive on how on all the 5 W's, how, what, when, why, who, are we going to do this,
Yeah. It's interesting to think about whether, like you say, whether your government is going to send out packets of worksheets to students that might be disadvantaged. And it's something I hadn't really thought about here. I don't think our government would do that. I think it would be up to individual schools. And in regards to making phone calls with students, we've been told to check in with our students, whether we're doing that through phone calls to the parents and just checking in to see how they're going, as well as their child. But with our middle and our senior students, we're going to be using, a lot of online stuff, like online meeting tools like Zoom or Google Hangouts and things like that. But you're right. What about those kids that don't have those things and they don't have accessible internet? And it is going to throw a lot of challenges our way, that's for sure. But I guess as teachers, we're pretty good at being thrown a challenge. So
Yes, we
I
are
think,
very
yeah,
resilient
we
people.
are. We are a resilient people. So with all the experience that you've had, especially in other places, like you mentioned that
Yep.
you have taught in Kuwait and in China and France as well.
Yes.
Um, are many people reaching out to you during this crisis and sort of asking about what you're doing and what your advice might be, or?
Well, Dan, it's interesting you say that because I still collaborate with an academy in China. So I'm still on retainer and I still collaborate with an academy out of China. And after our podcast at 7:30, I will begin talking with them as well.
Oh,
So
wow.
yes, they have been online this entire time from the day that they went full closure, that the students have been on time online the entire time, learning online.
Yeah.
And so I have been, when I worked in China, it was, I did a summer academy there through the academy that I work with. And then I do online learning with them. And so we use it through their WeChat, which is a national
Yeah.
app that has grown in amplitude and in size. And so I've been tutoring students and teaching classes of more than 10 for over, let's say, since 2017. So since I came back to Canada, about 3 years now. And
Wow.
one of their coordinators is in London, Ontario, and she contacted me much the same way that we came in contact. And she asked, "Would you mind collaborating with us, setting up programs, sending worksheets, and sending stuff?" They have a different learning model, and so I've been doing that with them this entire time. They have been shut down, learning from home, doing their work at home.
Yeah. That's interesting that you talk about the work that you're doing with China, because in the episode prior to this, I spoke to Troy Huck, and he's at
Okay.
home in Missouri in the States at the
Yeah.
moment, but works for the Shanghai International School. And when all this
Wow.
went down, he went home with his because he's got young children, and so went back home for safety reasons, I guess. But he's teaching now across 20 time zones. So to me,
Yeah.
that's a massive challenge. And then to
Yep.
throw the challenge with you as well. So you're doing much the same, really, teaching across those
Yeah.
time zones on
You've
top
got to
of
set
teaching
yourself
locally.
up. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I've been doing that now for 3 years. So I guess I'm a bit seasoned in it. And I know the expectation of the students and the expectation of the parents.
Mm,
So that cultural difference is also obvious. We know that in different areas of the world, students are learning differently and they have different expectations than,
mm,
let's say, in the Western world. So that'll also be very, very different to see. And then I can have a good measure of what that looks like. Now,
mm.
as I said, I should have been in Kuwait currently, but that of course got canceled, rightfully so. And I know that there as well, currently, when I speak to my other colleagues and when I spoke to the school that I was going to deliver workshops in, they've transitioned online because they don't want to have a cohort of students that are held back a year.
Mm,
There's so many private schools there. As I said, a strong majority of private schools as opposed to government schools. And they are it's an affluent country. So
mm.
people are seeking, say, private education for a whole multitude of reasons. And those schools are moving full force forward with e-learning because they need to graduate those students, number one, for post-secondary scholarships, etc. They don't want to hold them back because then it'll be a double cohort. They'll all be competing, for a small pot of scholarships and a
Mm.
university acceptance
Wow.
amongst globally, right? Let's say this can be globally. So they're moving full force forward. They've lobbied the government, the private schools, and they've said, we're moving forward. We have students who have already paid for their seat coming in. We got to move forward. So we're online, and they're online and they're teaching online.
Yeah. So this isn't really a big stretch for these students, then, is it? And with the support
I
of their families as well. It's
Well, Dan, as we said, different countries, different cities, different communities have different social economics, which are always a factor in students learning.
yeah.
When basic needs are met, students thrive. They thrive. So there's always that factor as well.
Yeah.
I think in the Asian culture, from my knowledge, education is a priority for different factors. And I know that my Asian students who I've been working with for many years now and all different levels, they also have the ability to learn independently. I don't know if it's a form of child rearing. What I noticed when I was there is that parents really raise their children to be very independent from very young. So
Okay.
I think that could be one of the factors that my students in Asia are able to work independently a little bit better, say, than my students in Canada. I
Mm.
don't know if we just are a little bit more coddling. Maybe we baby our students more, or we're much more empathetic to different circumstances in their lives. However, either way, if the basic needs are met, food,
Mm.
shelter, safety, students will thrive.
Yeah.
So this is circling back to what we said a little while ago. This is one of the things that educators are very concerned about.
Yeah. And rightfully so.
Oh
Um,
yes. Oh,
and
oh, oh yes.
and I mean, it sounds like we work in similar socioeconomic areas, and
Yeah.
you know, but obviously, I think we were talking earlier about the school I work at uses a lot of technology, so we kind of feel like we're ready. We kind of have a good sense of understanding what families do and what don't have internet. But then circling back to what you said before about who's responsible at home, I was actually talking to a good friend on the phone today about the possibility of schools closing down. And this friend lives in Queensland, and so it's a little bit different than here. But she has a child in prep, which is the same as your kindergarten, I would say,
Okay.
and she's worried about, how do I make sure my prep student, my year one student, and my year two student, because she's got three, are all doing their homework. I can't do that all at one time. And, I just said, well, your grade two student could read. They could probably do a lot of it on their own. And then you just switch between the two for your prep and your year one student. And I think with those prep students,
Okay.
as long as we can get them reading, I think the rest they can catch up on very easily later on. I don't know what you think about that.
Huh. I think it will be left to see.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting. It's a new way. That's it. Teaching is now forever changed.
Mm.
We'll need to see. We will see the effects. And because so many areas are in the early adoption phase, we're going to see slowly, slowly, slowly all of the glitches weigh themselves out.
Mm. I
So
really
it'll
hope,
be interesting.
yeah, I really hope that there's a researcher out there somewhere who is monitoring this and,
Oh, yeah.
and really taking note of what's happening, because this is the perfect time to learn something new for education. And I just hope someone is, I guess part of this
It's,
podcast is chronicling part of that journey, I suppose, really, isn't it?
yeah, it's an unprecedented time. And there, the net under all of it is that people are afraid. People are
Yeah.
afraid. Parents are afraid. And that fear can transfer to their students,
Mm.
I'm sorry, transfer to their children.
Yeah.
And it's a time of crisis, and it'll all of those factors will play into how well the students will be on their own learning at home.
Yeah. Yeah.
It'll be one more facet that if the students don't know what to do, will their parents have one more burden on their plate to help them? Will they be able to help them? Are they very focused on their own sustainability of food and water and shelter and paying the bills? What what and how that will take shape, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
We really don't know. I was listening yesterday to the president of the United States, and they were asking him about a vaccine or some kind of drug, and he said, I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe no. It might work. We don't know, but we need to try. So I feel like with this, maybe yes, maybe no, it might work, it might not. Schools that are already doing this globally, for them, it's a seamless transition. For those who aren't, we are in the infancy, early adoption stage, and we're going to have to just, iron out those glitches as we go.
Yeah. And I think we're really lucky as well, I guess, with Australia, Canada, the United States, a lot of the Western countries where the virus has hit most recently, in that Asia's been through it 7 weeks before us. So we're already learning from them. I mean, you just have to look on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, any of the social media platforms with just resources, ideas, support just coming left, right, and center from teachers that have already been there, done that.
Yeah.
And they are already telling us what did work and what didn't work. And I just think that's incredible. Like, that we can live in that time in history where not only can we face this crisis, but we can actually walk through the crisis together, regardless of where on the planet we are, which is amazing. And speaking of that, I wanted to ask you if you had any advice for teachers that just in supporting their students remotely.
Stay calm. Remain calm.
Yeah.
Remain calm and teach online.
Let's make that into a poster.
That's it. Remain calm and teach online.
Yeah.
I think that one of the most important things is for educators to know that it's not going to be perfect, because we are such intellectual and creative and hands-on and very loving and compassionate and empathetic humans. You need to be those things to do this work.
Yeah.
I feel that they may want it to be perfect, and they're going to want to hold on to it so tightly. However, I feel that because many of us are just beginning, me as well, we're just learning, we're just navigating through this. It is okay if it goes wrong. It is okay if you don't know what to do, and just say that. I feel that globally, we're in a time where people are compassionate and loving to others, and they will understand if you say, I don't know what to do right now. Just give me a moment to figure this out, or I'll get back to you. And as an instructional coach, and you know this as well, Dan, we don't know everything. We're not perfect. We have to ask, and ask often, are in regards to questions that educators ask us. I don't know everything. I can't tell you. And if I say something and it's wrong, who's accountable for that? So I'm always very careful what I say and what I do, because I want to come back to educators with the right answer. So I think it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be messy. It's going to be it's going to be distracting, and it's going to be all of the ugly until it goes smoothly.
Yeah, I think you've given some really good advice there, and I think we're lucky that we can reach out to people and be vulnerable.
There might be a lot of tears. There might be a lot of tears, Dan.
I think there probably already has been, but I mean, as long as we need to keep seeing the positives, and it's really hard when the media is so full of the negatives, but I think we need to stick together. And as I end this episode of the podcast today, I really wanted to emphasize that as teachers, we are traveling through such uncertain times, but it's important that we're sharing our experiences and that we are connecting with each other, and that it is a really good opportunity to learn from the successes and failures of others. I mean, I guess for me, the biggest reason that I started this podcast was to do just that, because I like helping teachers. I get a real kick out of it. I love teaching children, don't get me wrong, but the biggest kick for me comes from seeing what a teacher can do with what I've taught them as well. So, but I'm so glad I had you on the program today. It's been great to talk to you.
It's my pleasure, Dan. I feel reassured knowing that I'm not the only one who is ready for a storm coming.
Yeah, exactly. So if you want to be a part of this podcast, or if you would like to ask me a question, you can email me at dan@ponderingdan.com. You can also find me on all the socials, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Pondering Dan. Remember to follow Natasha on Twitter. That's at NEFEGHALI, at NE Feghali. And check out her website, natashafeghali.com. And I'll put the link for both of those in the description to this episode. But before we sign off, Tash, do you have any parting words?
Be calm. Take it slowly and one day at a time. We are all in this together.
Yeah, exactly. Well said. So thank you again, everyone, for tuning in. Look after yourself, your family, and your friends, and let's stick together. All the best for now. I'm Danny. Bye.